Continuing worldwide popularity of the series that ran only 3 network seasons is a phenomenon in the annals of television. With us tonight is the creator and producer of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry. Do you get a little chill even yourself when you see that?
Yeah, it has the same flavor for me that it has for others.
I would guess, and knowing that so many people know of that and that you created it.
Because we don't talk Star Trek at home, and I'm able to be fresh about it when I'm out. It'd be too much if it was a subject conversation around the house, too.
As successful as it has been, John, and of course as proud as you are and how long-lasting it is, do you sometimes get sick of all the attention that it has gotten? And just get bothered?
I do at times, but a great deal of it is fun. It has led me into studies of the future. I just came from a lecture at MIT, which is a very exciting place to be, and that's really where it's led me. So
the Trekkies or the Trekkers don't bother you?
No,
really?
the Trekkies are really a very, very nice group of people. In 20 years since we've done it, I've never had a bad experience with a Trekkie. True, they put on costumes, some of them do, and so on, but so do men that belong to fraternities and fraternal clubs and so on. Most of them, but also when you go to a convention, you meet doctors and scientists and people like that who are also Trekkies. It's not a group of
true science fiction
people.
buffs, though,
yes,
knowledgeable people.
Yes.
Now, looking back in the mid-'60s, the idea came to you, was it kind of like a wagon train to the stars? Kind of
Well,
how did that...
I said that to sell it, because in the 60s, Westerns were a big thing. And I knew I couldn't go to a network at a time where they never had any adult science fiction and sell science fiction. So I said, hey, fellas, it's not so much different from a Western. They ride a spaceship instead of a horse. They use a phaser instead of a 6-gun. And but it'll be action-adventure just like a Western. Because I didn't do that on the first pilot, and that's why it didn't sell.
Okay, well, speaking of the first pilot, let's take a look at this, because it's a pilot you did not see and a little different characters. So we'll take a look at the first pilot for Star Trek. Jeffrey Hunter as the captain. Christopher Pike?
Captain, yes.
What didn't they buy about that pilot? What didn't they like? This is the network executives, or...
Instead of giving them action-adventure, when I got to writing it, I thought, wow, here's a chance to write something that interests me. And I did a show about a race that could read through your mind the experiences you had. And it was just, NBC said it's too intellectual. Of course, they said it's too intellectual for the clouds out in the TV audience, which, of course, it was not. But it was too different to start the show with.
Now, you had a woman second in command on that first pilot,
yes,
too? They didn't like that?
They didn't like that at all.
Way ahead of its time.
Well, and it's not just, it was not male, a male thing either, because we showed that pilot to women, and the women were also writing, who does she think she is?
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, women have not always been pro-sex equality in those days. We're talking about 1965. The women didn't like it that much either. Well, a nice thing about all this is we grow. We humans actually grow.
And of course, that's what you were doing with your characters, too, as time passed.
Yes, and everyone assumes we've always believed in sexual equality, or at least the women have, and that's simply not true.
Now, did you pick Jeffrey Hunter?
Yes.
And they rejected him?
No, they just didn't like the pilot. Jeffrey's wife of the time did not want him to do it again. She thought science fiction was kind of beneath what an actor should be doing. Science fiction was very tough. I tried a number of stars, and they said, look, Gene, I've seen science fiction. I know what it is, and I don't want to be associated with it.
That's because all the pictures in the movies used to have that big ball of something flying towards everybody.
Bug-eyed monsters is what they were.
Okay. We're visiting with Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek. We're going to open our phone lines now for your calls, and considering Mr. Roddenberry's vast experience, others they were on that Enterprise, they had their problems. So let's take a look. They had good senses of humor, huh?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we did have such bright actors, and as well as directors and everything. It says created by Gene Roddenberry, but what I did is I wrote skeletons of the characters, and then actors like that came along and put the flesh and blood and the depth in them. Hollywood is one of those rare places in which a committee does create something.
That's good. More should do that. Hello, you're on Late Night America.
Hello, I'm James from Louisiana. And the question I have, Mr. Roddenberry, is how you came up with your ideas and what type of science background you have.
Thank you.
I didn't have any more than just a normal college science background in those days. As a matter of fact, in those days, I wasn't too sure the difference between a solar system and a galaxy. The marvelous thing about a Star Trek is it puts you back into growth, and you learn about those things. Where writers come up with ideas, though, is basically a sort of a daydream type process. And we often, I could live through Spock very much and get a story idea from trying to think as Spock thought.
Actually, you have a device. I read an article that you had written, and actually the characters start talking to you eventually. You know their characters so well that you said you'd ask them questions, and answers would come pretty soon. Answers and questions would come very quickly.
Yeah, any writer who really cares what he's doing works very hard in developing a character. The system I use is I draw a line down the middle of a page, and I write my questions here and the other answers there. And after a while, Spock gave more and more complex answers, and then finally he began asking me questions. Yeah. And I spent months with his character working like that. You know, what kind of an idiot sits up in his study talking to a character that he invented? But it works.
It sure has worked for you. Hello, you're on Late Night America.
Yes, this is David from Springfield, Missouri. And he was talking about the sensors, and I was wondering, given the era of time, I remember an episode in which Uhura kissed Captain Kirk, and they said it was the first interracial kiss on national TV. And I was wondering how that got by the censors.
Well, it got by them. Something about that was very nice. First of all, they said if you had a multiracial crew, it wouldn't get in. I said, well, we can't do the show then because we'll never get to the 23rd century if we're not living together. Then they predicted that having a female, a black female, and in those days there was a great deal of talk of prejudice, would not work in the South. We are better than we think we are. In all the years of Star Trek, I have never gotten a nasty letter on Uhura or any of this. Well, we make more progress than we give ourselves
So they didn't
credit for.
hassle you on that. That's
They
good.
did not.
Okay. Hello, you're on Late Night America.
Hello, I'm Susan, calling from Decatur, Illinois.
Hi, Susan.
My question for Mr. Roddenberry is that in the third movie, I was very upset by the destruction of the Enterprise, and I was just wondering what your reaction to that was and what you think is going to happen in the future as to the crew of the Enterprise and what their ship's going to be.
Okay, she wants the next movie.
Well, Susan, that shook me up, too. But it's part of what I was talking about. You can't bring in a top producer and say, but don't do that because I wouldn't do that. I think you can count on the fact that they have all sorts of creative plans for bringing back an Enterprise and making it a very exciting return.
Hello, you're on Late Night America.
Hello, I'm Steve from Adrian, Michigan.
Hi, Steve.
Mr. Roddenberry, I was wondering if Spock or Vulcans were based on an Oriental way of life or philosophy. I see a lot of parallels, like hard on the outside and soft on the inside. And also, I was wondering if there's an address or a phone number that you can get Star Trek paraphernalia that's you used to be able to get in the stores that's not available anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there are still a couple of firms that sell them, but for the life of me, I can't remember the post office box. If you write Star Trek at Paramount, they'll put you onto something. About the Oriental thing, I think that came out of, again, the characterization given it by the actors and producers, and in the movies there was sort of an Oriental look to it. But basically, the reason I did Spock the way I did is I have had so much trouble out of emotion in my life, really fouled up so often that I thought it just would be fun to write someone that didn't have that problem, and it just sort of grew out of an innocent thought like that.
Now, with the 20th anniversary coming up next year, is anything special going to be done? Do you know of anything? There might be at least a commemorative stamp. I heard some of the actors have signed petitions
I heard
for
about that, and that's wow, that's something. They're going to have a lot of large conventions and many things like that. It's going to be, the 20th anniversary is going to be a very busy year, I suppose, for all of us. I'll be kind of glad when it's over.
How's the star on the Walk of Fame look to you? You're the only one of...
Oh, that's crazy for a writer to get one of those. Can you believe that?
The only one, right?
Yeah.
You go down to stand on it sometimes?
I haven't been out to it yet. I've had some writer friends who threatened to go out to it and do things I can't mention on the air.
Well, you had a marvelous career, really, and we look for big things yet.
We'll try.
I'm sorry, I don't know where the time went, but it sure went by fast. Well, thanks for being with us.